The 16th chapter in this book is dedicated to the topic of colonization and how virtually the entire Muslim world was occupied and devoured by the enemies of Islam around the 19th and 20th centuries. And the way I see it, this all goes back to the taking of Al-Andalus by the Catholic monarchs. When they invaded Al-Andalus, not as a reconquest, as Western propaganda suggests, but as a conquest of a neighboring land that had no previous connection to them, they found themselves on the very edge of the world's trade routes. This meant that all of the spices and the other goods that came from India and China passed through different empires along the way, each adding their own taxes and tariffs, which made it extremely expensive by the time any of these goods ended up in Portugal or Spain. So these two lands in particular invested a lot of effort into building blue water fleets with the help of new ship construction techniques and technologies such as the compass and the astrolabe. Up until that point, all fleets had been white water, which meant that they would have to follow the shores. They couldn't leave the shoreline, or they couldn't leave sight of land, because then they just get lost in the ocean. But these blue water fleets, they were able to now go out into the oceans and navigate their journeys by using the positions of the stars without having to see the shore. And the boats were constructed strong enough so that they could withstand the heavy waves of the oceans. So now these blue water fleets, they could go places where other fleets couldn't go. And so they could just disappear into the ocean out of sight, and then they could come back and pop up out of nowhere, since the Muslim navies, like the Ottoman fleet for example, could not follow them. So all of a sudden they had this huge advantage in the competition of global trade. They could bypass the Muslim lands by going around the southern tip of Africa, for example, to get to India. They could also travel west across the Atlantic Ocean in search of new routes to Asia. Soon after that, the Industrial Revolution took place. It started in Britain because they had a lot of coal in that land. And these new blue water fleets also gave them access to iron from across the world. Soon factories were being built, and the steam engine and other automation technologies were being developed. And this gave the Europeans a massive advantage over the rest of the world. And soon they began dominating it. That's when you had the European powers carving Africa and Asia and splitting it amongst themselves. You also had the eventual fall of the Ottoman Empire, which brought the Middle East under European control. And so I go through all of this and I analyze the different parts of the Muslim world that were conquered and the specific circumstances of these places. I also highlight all of the various heroes that fought back and the martyrs that fought back against these colonial powers, such as Tipu Sultan in India or Umar al-Mukhtar in Libya. And then there's the Ottoman Empire, which I explain why it was unable to industrialize to the level of the Europeans. I also go over the circumstances of its eventual fall and how the caliphate was abolished as an institution. And this chapter, it will also pay special attention to Central Asia, where I go over the colonization of these lands by the Russian Empire. Then there's, of course, the colonization of the Muslims in Malaysia and the Philippines by the Japanese, and how they tried to use Muslims as a counterbalance against the European powers. And then, of course, there's the tragic case of Palestine, which still remains under colonial occupation till this day. But I'll give Palestine extra attention in the next chapter, ironically called Independence. Finally, there was the colonization not of the Muslim lands, but of the Muslim minds as well. So you had ideas like liberalism and feminism, capitalism, communism, consumerism, scientism, secularism, individualism, and of course the support of sexual perversions with the LGBT movements. And so inshallah I'll explain all of these different ideologies, how they came about and how they were promoted as part of like this progressive ideology. And I'll respond to each of them with the Islamic positions, the Islamic stances on these, and how Islam differs in its lifestyle from them. So when talking about capitalism and communism, for example, I'll have a whole explanation about how the Islamic economy works instead. So this will probably be the longest chapter in the entire book. And I might end up having to split it into two different chapters, depending on how long it gets. But The thing is that I like to write the different chapters in particular flows, in particular sequences. And so I have to see where it is that I could split it into two, if I want to split into two. Otherwise, if I just keep it as one chapter, it's going to end up being very long, and I might just do that. And the chapter could be long enough that it could be a book in its own. So yeah, if you're interested in the book, go to my website and pre-order the book now. I will literally write your name into the book as an honor for you being one of the original backers of this project. But this is only for the people that pre-order the book during this Ramadan only. May Allah honor your name with a legacy that the ummah will never forget. And may the generations of people who read this book hundreds of years from now know that it was you who was the reason that this book could even exist in the first place. Ameen.